What's going on, everybody? It's your boy BJ, the DJ. You are now tuned into the rewrap. Before we get started, if you haven't already, please make sure you hit that subscribe button. You can also find the rewrap on any digital streaming platform in which you enjoy your podcast. So find us and tap in on there. And last but certainly not least, if you haven't already checked in with the boys at Over the Top with Chad and Tony, please make sure you do so. You can find me on there as a recurring guest talking about movies and nostalgic wrestling. Let's get to it. Episode 7. So for this particular episode, I wanted to kind of change pace a little bit. We've talked about top 10 MCs. We've ranked No Limits, top 10 influential artists. We've talked about the top 10 females. For this particular episode, I want to show the producers some love. So if you think about it, there are way more than 10 producers. It's hard to narrow a producer list down to 10, right? Because it's going to be one of those that if you think the MCs, there's a difference in opinion on the top 10 MCs, then you can only imagine the producers, because most people listen to music because it gives them a certain feel. So they tend to cater to a certain sound or a certain genre or a certain type of song based on their likes and their interests. So finding a producer that creates that particular feeling and that sound, you tend to cling to that producer, right? If you think about it, like, being a producer has changed dramatically over the past, let's say, decade, right? I was listening to a podcast the other day, and it had Timbaland on there, and he was talking about how much they were getting for their production in the late 2000s, 2010 timeframe, right? And the reason being is because things hadn't changed over digitally just yet. They were in the studio with the rapper. They were creating something from scratch. Nowadays, you're just kind of sending files back and forth, and then the engineer takes it or the rapper takes it and changes the whole arrangement. So what you send them may not even be what the end result ends up being. So it's just changed. And I think, if you talk about who knows what these producers are charging nowadays. I know back then Timbaland said he was getting $400K a beat. I've also heard that Dr. Dre charges a $75,000 membership fee just to work with him. So these producers were getting like ridiculous money, and they probably still are, because a producer will make or break a record, right? They'll make or break a song. And I love hearing older producers work with newer artists now, and I love hearing newer artists work with or older artists work with newer producers, like Nas and Hit Boy, for instance. Now, Nas has kind of pretty much rejuvenated his career working with Hit Boy with the King's Disease trilogy, and so Hit Boy has found a way to complement Nas's style, because Nas didn't cater or didn't waver from who he was in order to work with Hit Boy. It's just kind of worked the way they found a formula. And you've got like DJ Premier with Royce the 5'9" with their Prime project. So you've got these newer age MCs working with these classic producers and vice versa. So it's great when they can find an element that works. I love hearing DJ Paul and Juicy J produce for these newer rappers. I feel like it keeps that old Memphis sound alive. So I really enjoy hearing those types of collaborations when it comes to producer rapper relationship. But so what I have here is a list. I have a top 10 list. And I have some honorable mentions, but I'm going to save those for the B-side. This is going to be the first official B-side release after this podcast airs. We'll do a B-side release to it as well. So that was something I kind of wanted to incorporate with the podcast, and I talked about it during episode 0. So this will be the first official release of a B-side segment, and it'll talk about the honorable mentions from the producer standpoint. So what I have here is a list. I have a top 10 list of producers. Now, some of this is going to be biased based on region, because those of you who know me knows I live in Tennessee, which is in the South. So I'm going to be very biased about Southern producers because I feel like they get overlooked a lot. But I think I do a good job with this top 10 list, creating a safe list, I think, of 10 producers I feel like have made a huge impact on hip hop and music in general. So let's get started with it. I'm looking at the screen up here. I have it up, I have my notes up on the screen. Number 10, I'm starting out with Rick Rubin. To me, Rick Rubin, I consider him to be the godfather of hip hop, right? He helped create one of the biggest record labels of all time with Def Jam. He's responsible for breaking some really big artists in the early days of hip hop with the Beastie Boys, with LL Cool J. He has worked, his catalog has stretched across multiple genres. Now, I know we're strictly talking about hip hop in a sense, but if you look at his catalog, his production catalog, this man has worked with everyone from the Beastie Boys to Eminem, from System of a Down to Audio Slave, all the way to Johnny Cash. This man has a production catalog that is unbelievable. Some of his biggest hits, some of the biggest songs I love that I listen to that Rick Rubin produced will probably be Walk This Way, Rock the Bells, all that early LL Cool J stuff and the early 90s hip hop stuff. I really, really enjoy with the Run DMC. 99 Problems is one of my favorite songs. No Sleep Till Brooklyn, big song. You're starting to hear that song in a lot of movies. Let's see, Fight for Your Right. And he also brought us Sir Mix-a-Lot with his Def America label that he launched after leaving Def Jam. So, again, Godfather hip hop. I feel like that's Rick Rubin. He comes in at number 10 on this list. Number 9, I was talking about my Southern bias, and I think this person deserves to be on a top 10 list just for what he helped create in itself. So, number 9, I got Manny Fresh. Manny Fresh is solely, I'm saying this loosely, but Manny Fresh is solely responsible for creating Cash Money's sound and success. I don't think there would have been a Cash Money without Manny Fresh. I mean, 400 Degrees, I said it before, is one of the greatest albums ever produced. He helped launch the career of Lil Wayne. That entire Cash Money movement that happened right after the fall of the No Limit movement, something that we won't see ever again, I don't think. And even after he left Cash Money, he would go on to produce songs for T.I. He did Top Back. He made Jeezy a commercial success with Then What. I don't think Manny Fresh gets the recognition he deserves. I don't. But I put him on my top 10 list. He comes in at number 9. Again, what he did in the late 90s to early 2000s, he really solidified his position on this list. So number 9, I got Manny Fresh. Again, with my Southern bias, coming in at number 8, I've got Lil Jon. Now, Lil Jon is one of the most underrated producers in the game. I don't think he gets enough respect as being a producer. When people think about Lil Jon, all they think about is the crunk rap. Now, Lil Jon was probably more featured as a producer than he was an actual performer. But there was a time frame from 2003 to 2007 where you couldn't turn on the radio without hearing Lil Jon on a song or a Lil Jon beat. He was key in ushering in the crunk era for Atlanta. Some of his biggest hits, you got Yeah by Usher that was performed at the Super Bowl, which was amazing. You got Get Low, Cyclone, Turn Down for What, which I think is approaching diamond status. And that's just to name a few. What he did as a producer is often overlooked because of what he did as a rapper or as a performer. So coming in at number 8, I've got Lil Jon. And let's stick to the Southern theme. I promise you we'll get to other regions and other areas, but sticking with the Southern theme, I've got DJ Paul and Juicy J at number 7. I have already dubbed 3 6 Mafia the greatest rap group of all time, and I've already mentioned how great I felt like their production was and how overlooked they were as a producer. Individually, they've gone on to have great careers as producers after breaking up 3 6 Mafia. But together and collectively, like two of the biggest songs I love listening to on a regular basis is International Players Anthem. And it goes back to that rapper-producer relationship that I talk about. International Players Anthem is produced by 3 6 Mafia. It features Outkast and UGK. When you talk about Southern hip-hop and Southern influence, it doesn't get any bigger than that. And the other is the Talk Up off Drake's album featuring Jay-Z. So I've got DJ Paul as a producer sampling a Dr. Dre track, and I've got Drake, one of the biggest artists in the world, with one of many consider to be the GOAT in Jay-Z. So those two tracks stay in rotation for me all day, every day. I can listen to those songs every single day and be okay with it, right? 3 6 Mafia or DJ Paul and Juicy J would not produce too much outside of the 3 6 Mafia imprint, but they did work with a lot of artists. They had hits like Who Run It. Again, I mentioned International Players Anthem, Riding Spinners, Popping My Collar, Late Night Tip. The list goes on and on. Like, they really created something special for Memphis rap. They created their own sound, and they didn't waver from that. So when they did work with artists outside of 3 6 Mafia, they were brought into the 3 6 Mafia world and had to adjust what they did in order to fit and accommodate the 3 6 Mafia sound. And I loved it when I heard it. So, Great. DJ Paul Juicy J comes in at number 7 for me. And again, like I've said in previous podcasts, I'm not going to argue with anybody about Memphis rap. It's just not going to happen. It's one of the greatest unrecognized territories there ever was. And 3 6 Mafia helped solidify that statement. So, number 7, DJ Paul Juicy J. So the person I have at number 6 is probably higher on a lot of people's list. When you talk about producers who have been able to work with the who's who in hip hop, this guy is no exception whatsoever. I've got number 6. I've got Timbaland. Now, I first heard of Timbaland on Missy's "I Can't Stand the Rain." He had his own little thing going in Virginia with Timbaland and Magoo. He was really launching Aaliyah's career. Now Aaliyah had already had songs out, but he was helping to launch Aaliyah's career, and he was working with a virtually unknown producer, rapper in Missy Elliott. So, I mean, Timbaland, this man's catalog is unreal. I mean, it stretches anywhere from Jay-Z to Justin Timberlake, Nelly Furtado to Game. I mean, I don't think there's anybody who hasn't worked with this guy. Sorry, one of my favorite scenes from the Fade to Black documentary was the one where he's in the studio with Jay-Z and he's playing all these beats or whatever, and then they finally figure out that they found one with "Dirt Off Your Shoulders." In that scene where he's walking off, he says, "I'm the greatest." So I think there's several people out there that will probably put Timberland higher on this list. But I've got him coming in at number 6. I mean, you got to look, Big Pimpin', "Dirt Off Your Shoulders," and countless other hits. I mean, Timberland. The thing I think is the coolest about Timbaland is that he mentions that he never learned how to play an instrument. So what he's doing is basically figuring out how to orchestrate sounds. Another little fun fact about Timbaland, I don't know if you know this or not, but Timbaland also is the one who did the drums on the Stronger song for Kanye West, because at that time Timbaland was really killing the game, and Kanye was like, "I'm getting beat in the clubs by Timbaland all day every day, so if I want my record to be as big as his, why not pull him in on it?" So you see a scene where Timbaland's in there programming drums for Stronger, which I thought was really dope. So, Timbaland could definitely be higher on this list. I've got him at number 6, because number 5, of course, is the before mentioned Kanye West. Now, I am not really a big fan of Kanye West's newer stuff, and that's not a personal jab at Kanye. I just feel like he's sometimes overhyped and underperforms. Now, from College Dropout all the way to, I'd say, Late Registration, I don't feel like there was anybody better than Kanye West. He created a sound when the Blueprint dropped, he created a sound with that sped up sample that really changed rap music. Everybody wanted that sound in every single song after that, but nobody has done it quite like Kanye did. And he's been able to adjust his sound and adjust his beats to accommodate newer age rappers. But I'm not a fan of the stuff he does now. I was a big fan of his Christian album he put out. I thought it was great, but I'm just not a big fan of the rapper Kanye. I'm not a big fan of the producer Kanye now. But again, that era from College Dropout to Late Registration, nobody was touching Kanye West. I mean, there are way too many hits of his to even mention, right? I mean, this guy has done songs with everybody and anybody and done some really big records. Some of my favorites, I've got Encore off the Black Album, Heart of the City off Blueprint, Overnight Celebrity by Twista. I really love the production he did for Twista. There is one thing, and I don't know how he played a factor into this at all, but on Overnight Celebrity, at the beginning of that song, Twista says, "We've done it again, from Pope Pimpin' to poppin' tags." Now, I don't remember Kanye West getting any production credit on Pope Pimpin' at all. So if you know how he played a part in that song, please leave it in the comment section. Let me know. But yeah, again, big fan of Kanye's early work. Not going to downplay him as an artist because he's probably one of the most successful artists of all time. He's one of the biggest artists of this generation, and he'll sell millions of records and stream billions of times, despite what I say. So, but just not a fan of the early, just not a fan of the newer stuff. Big fan of the older stuff. So number 5, I've got Kanye West. Coming in at number 4, for me, this is a very respected producer. I think he is He's an MC's producer. He is not necessarily accommodating to too many rappers. I've got DJ Premier. I put him in my top five just for the work he did on Reasonable Doubt. He has produced for numerous MCs. I think some of my favorite rappers to listen to on Primo's beats is got to be Nas, and also the stuff he did with Royce 5'9" with the Prime Project. I mean, he's worked with pretty much anybody from Jay-Z to Fat Joe, from Snoop Dogg to Too Short. So you've got the East Coast, West Coast collaborations there. Again, he's an MC's producer, not necessarily a rapper's producer, but I love Primo. He was key in um, incorporating the scratches into his beats. And when you heard a Primo beat, you knew it was a Primo beat. There was no question. So yeah, definitely Primo comes in my top five. I got him at number 4. Number 3, I've got who I consider one of the greatest CEOs, one of the greatest masterminds behind a label or a group, and one of the greatest producers of all time, obviously, because he's coming at number 3. I got RZA. He strategically created that entire Wu-Tang sound. He created at least 7 classic albums from 93 to 97. You know, he helped make superstars out of guys like ODB, Ghostface Killer, and to me, one of the most underutilized and underappreciated MCs of all time, and Method Man. Can't forget what he did for the Kill Bill movie as well. He did the scores for that. So he was one of the first hip hop producers that I remember getting into film and doing the scores for the movies as well. I really thought that was dope because it brought a hip hop element to the movie, even though it wasn't really a hip hop movie. If I'm talking about my favorite Wu-Tang tracks that RZA did, I've got to mention Triumph, Cream, Shimmy Shimmy Y'all, Protect Your Neck. Also, Gravel Pit's probably one of my favorite Wu-Tang songs of all time. So definitely deserves to be in the top 5. He's coming in at number 3 for me. I got RZA. So here we are, number 2. And I've mentioned a ton of producers. So the next 2 I feel like could be flip flop depending on your taste or your style. I do feel like my number 1 is going to be my number 1 regardless. And again, I'm not debating my list. This is just my list. And if you feel different, I'd love to hear about it. Number 2 for me, I have the Neptunes. Now, you can paint it as Pharrell or as the Neptunes, Pharrell and Chad, however you want to paint it. But during the time when the Neptunes was popular, the producer pool was so crowded. That was like late 2000, early 2010s, right? The producer pool was extremely crowded, but somehow, some way, Chad and Pharrell found a way to make some big, big records. I don't think there's a producer or a team other than my number 1 that has had bigger records or has a better catalog. I mean, they found a way to alter their sound to accommodate the rappers they were working with. If you look at like the drug dealing lyrics from the Clips, look at what they did for Snoop, how they found a way to keep it gangster with Snoop, but also found a way to pull in a super smash radio hit with a song like Beautiful. They took the super thug himself, Nori, and made him a radio commercial smash, right? So I feel like anybody who wanted a hit, they had to call the Neptunes, right? Mystical, Shake Your Ass. The post No Limit stuff they did for Mystical was, some of my favorite. There are songs that I'm still finding out to this day that the Neptunes produced that I didn't realize they were a part of it. If you go back and listen to the 504 Boys album, they did that D Game remix on there, which actually featured Pusha T on it. A lot of people don't know that, but they did that track as well. So there's songs that I'm hearing that the Neptunes produced it I just completely forgot about. When I listen to it now, though, I can tell that it's them because of the sound, but completely. Like again, other than my number 1, I don't think there is another producer or another producer team that has a better catalog. And again, they could make a claim to be in the GOAT, right? So yeah, coming in number 2 for me, I've got the Neptunes. Now, number 1 on my list is not debatable. I will not argue with anybody about this. It is what it is. Number 1, I've got Dr. Dre, and I think that goes without saying because this man has launched careers for some of the biggest artist in the world. Got his claim to fame with NWA, which helped spawn the careers of rappers like Ice Cube, Eazy-E, started Ruthless Records, who created Bone Thugs and Harmony. The list goes on and on. If you look at this man's tree of life when it comes to hip hop, he's touched every branch. Like, he has touched a lot of artists across multiple genres, right? To me, the GOAT, Eminem, would have never been possible without Dr. Dre. Kendrick Lamar, arguably the greatest rapper of this day and age, again, came through Compton and came through Dr. Dre. One thing I wish we would have gotten more Dr. Dre Tupac collaboration before Pac died, before the fallout. You know what I mean? California Love was a great song. There were songs that were Dre sounding that we're finding out that Dre didn't necessarily produce, but he was getting credit for. But I wish we would have got more of that Tupac Dr. Dre collaboration before all that fallout. But I don't think, if I'm talking about my favorite Dr. Dre songs, I mean, there's so many. I like Break Your Neck by Busta Rhymes. I love the record he did with Busta Rhymes. I think that's one of Busta Rhymes' best albums. And I love the collaborations that he pulled in to be on that project with him. I wish we would have got the Rakim album that Dr. Dre produced. I know it was in the works. Helped launch 50 Cent's career as well. Get Rich or Die Trying. He had some of the best beats on that album. There's so many to list. I don't think, much like I said about the Neptunes, this catalog is unbelievable. And Dr. Dre is, he tends to bring out the best in people. And a lot of people say that's part of his downfall. He's such a perfectionist. But, again, creating the greatest debut album of all time with Doggy Style, to coming back later on, working with Snoop again and still finding a way to make it magical. I just think, very few can say that Dr. Dre isn't the best in the business to do it. So that's my top 10. Let me know what you think. If you agree or disagree, who'd I forget? Who'd I leave off? Let me know. It's BJ the DJ. This has been the Rewrap. Catch you on the B-side.